Hello, my friends. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to you for joining us on this inaugural episode of the Cancer Interviews podcast. It's great to be here with you today, and I want to take this opportunity to personally thank you for joining us and let you know that you and what you're going through are the sole purpose and focus of this podcast. We want you to know that you're not alone on this journey. We invite you to be a part of our team, and we believe that together, everyone achieves more. We refer to our team as Team Journey. We're here for each other, and we're sharing the cancer journey together. Now, I must say, this is about the 7th time I've recorded this intro podcast episode, and I've done a lot of research and taken some free online courses about how to podcast and how to record video interviews, and all the gurus say if you're not completely embarrassed of your first podcast episode, then you waited way too long to start. But I've just had to redo some of my initial recordings because they were just too bad. And I'm sure this one won't be the best, but here goes. I just can't wait any longer to get started with what I hope you will find to be a very helpful and enjoyable podcast. Hello, I'm Jim Foster, and the mission of our podcast is to improve the lives of ordinary people around the world whose lives have somehow been impacted by cancer, by sharing the journey together through interviews with amazing people from around the globe who are sharing their journey with us. We're striving to bring you real-life information from real-life people who've actually walked the walk and aren't just talking the talk. Hopefully from our interviews with a wide variety of very special people dealing with cancer in one way or another, you'll be able to gather key pieces of information that can help educate, encourage, and inspire you or someone you know. Today's first episode will be fairly short, and I'll provide an introduction to the podcast and a brief overview of what to expect from our regular episodes, including different types of guests we'll be interviewing on the podcast. We'll take a look at the basic types of questions that will be posed to our guests and what the flow of the interviews will look like. I'll briefly mention my 2 cancer journeys and let you know where you can find out more about my cancer story if you're interested. We'll let you know where you can learn, engage, and share information via social media. And lastly, I'll share why I'm so passionate about starting this podcast, who this podcast is dedicated to, and how our recording studios got their names. So let's get started. First, I'd just like to say that this podcast is not about me. I'm just the host. Our regular episodes will average in length from 30 to 60 minutes, depending on each person's story. Initially, we'll try and deliver at least 2 or 3 episodes per week, but that may change slightly after we've had a chance to get into a more organized routine. And occasionally, there may be a guest host conducting an interview in certain situations. We believe that every day we survive cancer, we are a survivor. Sure, all of us hope that someday our cancer will be in full remission, and that is our sincere hope for everyone listening to this podcast. However, we focus on surviving one day at a time. We recognize that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and we believe that life is about the journey and not the destination. Most of our guests will either be cancer survivors or caregivers. However, occasionally some of them may be medical professionals or individuals associated with a charity or organization that provides useful tools and resources for cancer patients and their loved ones. The format will be based around a consistent list of major questions for each different type of guest, so you can see how each guest dealt with similar issues and challenges and hopefully take away helpful hints to apply in your own journey. We'll get to know each guest personally, where they're from, what their interests are, how cancer became a part of their lives, what their journey has been like, what their lowest point was and how they overcame it, what their most fulfilling moment was, what book they recommend to us, what was their favorite resource they used during their journey, and what would they do differently if they could do it all over again, assuming the same successful outcome. Hopefully from our guests' answers to these and other questions we'll be asking, we can all learn a great deal from each guest's personal knowledge and experience. So you may be asking yourself, what inspired me to start this podcast? Every day I wake up and I'm extremely grateful to be alive. As a 2-time Hodgkin Lymphoma cancer survivor, a husband, and a father, it's my life's passion to give back in some way to others who are also facing a cancer diagnosis in their own life or life of a loved one. If you'd like to learn more about both of my cancer journeys, please visit the About page at cancerinterviews.com, where I share more about the details associated with both of my battles with cancer. I won't go into detail here, other than to say I first knew something was wrong with me in September of 1995, after just turning 29. I was very ill for the next 14 months and was finally accurately diagnosed in October of 1996 with stage 3 Hodgkin lymphoma cancer. I underwent chemotherapy for 6 more months and entered my first remission in April of 1997, which lasted almost 5 years. I met my wife Suzanne in 1998, and we were married in 1999. In January of 2002, Suzanne became pregnant, and we were so excited. Then 2 months later, in March of 2002, my cancer returned, and I underwent an autologous stem cell bone marrow transplant and high-dose chemotherapy regimen, and entered into my second and current remission in August of 2002. 2 months later, our daughter Jessie was born. Looking back on my 2 cancer journeys, I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my wonderful parents, who were my initial caregivers, my wife Suzanne, who was my primary caregiver during my second journey, and to all of our family, friends, dozens of doctors, nurses, paramedics, and literally hundreds of medical support professionals, not to mention a miraculous answer to many, many prayers, some from people I didn't even know. Thank you all. Finding a meaningful way to give back in some way has been a dream of mine ever since. And now, with the technology available today through podcasting, video, and social media, we truly can share the journey together with the millions of people around the world who are currently dealing with cancer in their own life or life of a loved one. So that's how Cancer Interviews was born. I knew from personal experience that a lot of the online information was very institutional or scientific or statistical, all of which are very important parts in the fight against cancer. But there wasn't much information directly from patients, caregivers, survivors, parents, family members, and other people really immersed in their own daily cancer journey. As a cancer patient, you can often feel very lonely and isolated. Hopefully in this podcast, by interviewing these types of real-life people in real-life situations, we can learn information from other people who are going through similar situations that we're going through, and hopefully gain some encouragement and inspiration along the way. I just want to clarify that I'm not a medical doctor and I don't provide medical advice. Some guests may be medical doctors or licensed medical professionals. However, they won't be providing medical advice on this podcast. On behalf of all future guests and myself, we recommend that you seek out the professional advice of a licensed medical doctor regarding your personal situation. I've put together an initial lineup of amazing and inspiring guests to be interviewed on the podcast, and I'd like to invite you to nominate yourself or someone you know who you feel has a wonderful story to share with all of us. Please feel free to visit our website at cancerinterviews.com and click on the Request Interview link, and we'll reach out to you about scheduling an interview. From time to time, I'll be recording these episodes in different studios. The first is this one here, which I call Grateful Studios, because I'm extremely grateful to be alive and be able to come to work here and share this journey with each of you. Grateful Studios currently looks out over the skyline of downtown Denver, Colorado, USA. Some of our interviews will be conducted right here in this 2-room studio. However, many of our interviews will be conducted via Skype with guests from all over the world. The second studio is at my family's property in Wyoming. Ever since childhood, I've loved old Western TV shows, and my favorite show was Bonanza. During my initial cancer journey and hospitalizations, I watched a lot of television to pass the time and dreamed of someday being a cowboy and having a ranch like the Ponderosa. About a month after my wife Suzanne and I were married, we had the amazing opportunity to buy into a partner-owned dude ranch in Wyoming, and it truly was a dream come true. My studio there is in our RV, and I've named it Dreams Come True Studios, because I believe that dreams can and do come true. The last studio is our mobile studio when we're traveling and hopefully meeting people like you from around the world. I've named that studio the Global Mobile Studio, which consists of a duffel bag of portable recording equipment. Before we wrap up this first episode of the Cancer Interviews podcast, I'd like to let you know where the inspiration came from to start this new journey that I'm so excited and passionate about. This podcast was inspired by the millions of people around the globe who are battling cancer every day, and there are three very special people who were very important to me in my life, and this podcast is dedicated to their inspiration, character, and memory. The first person I'd like to dedicate this podcast to is my friend Tuck, who I got to know well because he was my physical therapist during my first round with cancer. I saw him almost every day for over a year at the main hospital I was at, and although I wasn't sure if I would survive or not, he kept me positive and said we were going to play golf together someday, and that he was going to teach me how to fly fish, both of which seemed impossible at the time, but eventually both of which came true. About a year after I went into my first remission, Tuck came down with a rare type of bone cancer that he never recovered from. After his passing, his wife gave me his fly fishing rod, which is now one of my most valued material possessions. The second person who inspired me is my friend Linda, who along with her husband were there to support me through both of my cancer journeys. When I first met Linda, she was already a breast cancer survivor. Shortly after we met, her cancer returned, and she successfully overcame it a second time. Many years later, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, which ultimately took her life after several decades of remission from breast cancer. Her husband later gave Linda's piano to my daughter Jessie, who Linda knew and shares her love of the piano with. I often sit down and play a song on Linda's piano and reflect on my many fond memories I have of her. And the third person I'd like to dedicate this podcast to is my friend Brian, who was quite a bit older than me, and when he first graduated from college, he was drafted into the military and joined the United States Navy, and became a jet fighter pilot like in the movie Top Gun. Except in Brian's case, it was a real deal in Southeast Asia. He also completed an Ironman triathlon with the U.S. Navy team on the island of Guam. During the last year and a half of his life, he battled pancreatic cancer. Brian was not a quitter, and he never gave up, and I never heard him complain about his situation. He was a positive and optimistic person, a true competitor and a loyal friend right to the very end. Lastly, I dedicate this new journey to my beautiful wife Suzanne and our lovely daughter Jessie, and to all of our wonderful family members, friends, and others who've been there for us over all these years, and to all of you listening to these podcasts and videos, and others around the world who are facing your own personal cancer journey. This show truly is for you. However you found us here today, I just want to let you know where else you can find us online and on social media. Our home base is cancerinterviews.com, with tons of information and resources to help assist you with your cancer journey. You can also find us on YouTube at the Cancer Interviews channel, or on Facebook at Cancer Interviews, and on Twitter at Cancer Interview, and on iTunes, Stitcher, and other podcast platforms at Cancer Interviews. From time to time, as the internet and social media evolve, we may add or discontinue certain social media channels. But as of the time of this recording, these are the initial places you can find us. So I hope you'll check back regularly for many great interviews to come, with many inspiring people who are sharing the cancer journey together with all of us. And from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you for listening. And please remember, you're not alone. You're a part of our team. We're all in this together, and we wish you the absolute best possible outcome with your cancer journey. So until next time, please take care, and we'll see you on down the road.